Good morning, everybody. This is Carrie Getz with another edition of our podcast for Careers for Women, Trades, Vets, and Tech. Today we have CherylODonoghue, who is a businesswoman and an author and an emotional intelligence leadership advocate. We'll ask her about that a little bit. But she's also a co-founder of Mission Sisters Who Work, which is a humanitarian organization that really helps women get kind of a head start in the industry. And so we're excited to have her and have her talk a little bit about the scholarships. But first off, Cheryl, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, hi. Yes, I am thrilled to be here, Carrie. I'm CherylODonoghue. First of all, I wanted to let you know, Carrie, how much I appreciate all the wonderful work that you do and your mission in helping so many people close the gaps in their lives, whether it's a gender gap or an opportunity gap, a pay gap. That's something that's really important to me. And when I saw the work that you're doing in that, it's always good to have someone like you out in my orbit. So first of all, thank you for the terrific work that you're doing, and for this podcast. I think it's marvelous.
Thanks. So tell us about Mission Sisters Who Work, and what kicked you off here to start this organization?
Yeah, well, and it gets back to this whole idea of gaps, closing gaps. It was 2016. And I found myself, I was chief communications officer for a healthcare company, loved the work, and I always had this driving desire to be of service to human beings. And I thought, well, could I do something more? That set in motion a series of events. And eventually what happened is, my daughter had just gone off to school, and my husband and I thought, you know what? Let's really see what it would be that we would do if we could really focus on being of service to others. So that led me to leaving the organization I had been with for 11 years and taking time to think about what would that be. So I started writing books. I've always enjoyed writing. It was 2016, and I looked out in the world and I said, women have come a long way, but boy, we've got still some ways to go here. And I felt that women deserved better. I felt young women deserved better. And I thought if a woman was determined, she deserved an excellent education. She deserved to be paid fairly, and she deserved to be treated fairly. And I thought, well, what could I do that's different? Because, we've had these issues for a while. So I said, well, one thing that I'm good at doing is I always have been good at closing my own gaps. Like if I had a gender gap, I would close it. If I had a pay gap, I would close it. And so I said, what would happen if I brought all these voices together of other women who have closed their own gaps, who aren't waiting for the gap to be closed on the outside, and they did something. They knew they deserved something better, and they did something about it. So I started writing the books. So the first book was How to Be a Woman in Business while being true to yourself. And the second book was How to Be a Woman in Technology while focusing on what matters most. And I'll circle back a little bit later, Carrie, about why I focused on technology. It has an important role in my life. But that's where I started. So I started with these books, and I said, well, I don't want to make money on the books. I want to give that back. So started Mission Sisters Who Work, and was funneling all the royalties, 100% of the royalties from the books went into Mission Sisters. And what we did is we then started buying other books for women to help them close those pay gaps, close those gender gaps. So we were buying them, both the books that I wrote. I was also creating programs and doing training programs and providing those. It was just one of those things. I fell in love with everything about it. I never really saw myself as running a nonprofit per se. So we now have a 501c3. It's a charitable organization. After doing that for a couple of years, and coming across so many women and hearing their needs and hearing their struggles, I sat down with my husband, who's the co-founder of Mission Sisters Who Work. His name's Mark. And we said, you know what? Let's enlarge our program, and let's offer scholarships so we can really reach in and provide a hand up to those people who will benefit most. And again, our focus is on women. And that's how we started.
Awesome. So we talked a little bit earlier, and you told me that you had 3 different kind of scholarships that are available, and they're targeting business and the STEM careers. So tell me a little bit about the different scholarships, how a young woman goes about applying, and what the focus is for each one of those scholarships.
Thanks. And one of the things, Carrie, we realized that, we didn't want to just offer college scholarships. We wanted to offer scholarships for women interested in additional training, as well as those interested in certification programs. And when I looked out in the world, and we were putting our own daughter through college, so I know there's not as many scholarships out there as we would like to think, unless you want to get yourself tied with a lot of debt. And when I started researching what was available for training programs and certification programs, the number was even smaller, so nearly negligible. So I thought, okay, let's offer 3 different types of scholarships. So the first one, we call it the Mission Sisters Explorer Scholarship. It's really for summer training programs, after school training programs, or special training programs that are focused on business and, as you said, the STEM related fields such as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it's awarded to help young women and women of all ages pay for those program tuition fees or material fees or just general fees. One of the things I'm going to mention, and Carrie, and this is true for all 3 of the scholarships, when we have the applications online, it's easy to complete. But I want to let people know too, it's a different type of application. You don't have to be talking about your grade point average and focusing on all the more academic things that we're usually used to doing when we have to fill out an application for some kind of scholarship. What we're really looking for is, the person's character and their commitment to using their talents to be of service to others. We're also interested in hearing what the applicants are doing in terms of how are they leading themselves day in and day out. And if they lead others, what are they doing to be a positive influence or a positive force for change in the world around them? Because that really is the mission of Mission Sisters. And so we wanted to make sure that, the scholarships were looking for those things as well. So the first one is the Explorer Scholarship. The second scholarship we call the Achiever Scholarship, and that's really for certification. So again, this is anyone who's either incoming or currently enrolled, a female student pursuing, business, science, technology, engineering, a mathematics-related certification. They do have to be enrolled in a U.S. school. They do have to complete the application form online. And they can use that. The award is given directly to the school to help pay for their tuition, their materials, and fees. And as I mentioned earlier, we're really looking, for their passion in that subject matter and their positive character, their commitment to using their talents to be of use and to be of service to others. So that's the second one. And then the third one we call the Aspirer. And that scholarship is for college education. And it could be at any level. So if you're pursuing an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's, even a doctorate, again, focusing in that major in business and STEM related careers. It does need to be a U.S. school. Complete the application online. And again, the scholarship is awarded directly to the school to help pay for the tuition, books, and fees. One of the things I wanted to say too, Carrie, is if someone comes to our website, they'll see there's not necessarily a deadline for when they have to have their application turned in, because we have a process by which we're looking at applications on an ongoing basis and funding on an ongoing basis. So it's not tied specifically to any date, but if you really need the funds for something that's very timely and time sensitive, there's an area on the application where you can let us know whatever timing consideration you may have. So that's something that I wanted to mention as well.
Well, a lot of the trade certifications don't necessarily follow an academic school year.
Exactly. Yep.
But that was actually our most listened to podcast so far, is the one that we did on certifications, because a certification can give you a huge leg up, especially if you're changing careers. I forget the statistic, but I read some time ago how many people get a degree and then change their degree. And we see this all the time in tech. Some woman got a degree in something that they're just miserable in, they're not digging it, or they got exposed to something in tech and they started out in one branch of tech and now they want to do something else in tech. And they may have a degree or may have a piece of a degree. A lot of these companies will pay for somebody's degree once they become an employee. And so there's a path to that degree without incurring all that debt that we were talking about. But certifications are a great way, even to figure out if that's what you want to do.
Right.
Just, you could go get that certification and see, but in many cases, it makes such a huge difference. There was a few of the certifications that if you look online, the difference between having a job and having a job with that certification can be ten to $20,000 a year. And for especially a single mom, that's a massive amount of change there.
And you know what? I I am a believer in certification. I hold four of them myself, and I'll tell you what, they are confidence boosters. Everything that you say is absolutely right. I mean, yeah, a certification is going to help you make more money. It's going to help you be better positioned in the company. You'll feel more confident. And you know what? It's there's something about that confidence that's really important, because when you have confidence, the confidence that comes from having that certification, where you know a subject matter to the point that you feel, you know, that you know you have amassed some knowledge, that's a boost, and it can help launch you into any variety of careers and any variety of new opportunities. I don't know. I'm a big fan of certification. So yes, I'm right there with you. And it was really important to us at Mission Sisters, that we would be able to help people and pay for those certifications. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, they fill a huge gap too, because a lot of the college curriculum hasn't really changed as fast as technology has
Mm-hmm.
changed.
Yep.
And the certifications really step up to the plate and get you current on the latest and greatest of whatever it is. Some of them are vendor related, some of them are industry knowledge based for certain subjects, but they definitely fill in that gap between curriculum because it hasn't kept up. We've had several podcasts talking to different people in the industry, and that is one problem. Curriculum is a very slow moving train. And to change it outside of a new rev of a textbook, a lot of the colleges are teaching really sort of old technology compared to the pace at which things change in technology. And so certifications definitely fill in that gap, the newer
Yeah.
stuff.
And I'll say a couple of things on the curriculum. You know, to your point of it being slow moving, I had taught classes at the college level, and I've got to tell you, a lot of that curriculum is really boring for a large number of students. They get out of school and they're like, oh my God, I've had enough of this. Okay. Because it doesn't really meet them where they are very oftentimes, or it's so academic, and it's like, how does this really connect with the real world? And that was one of the things that was important to me when I was writing both the books, How to Be a Woman in Business as well as How to Be a Woman in Technology. I wanted to fill those curriculum gaps. How do what happens if you're being treated unfairly? How can you handle that in a way that will help you get the best result? That's why I focus on emotional intelligence so much. They're not teaching you that in school. There's gaps. What happens if it comes time to negotiating your salary? How do we close the pay gap if we don't know how to have the conversation, if we don't have the words to use in the heat of the moment? And so what happens is, a lot of times we get, especially young women, we get angry. Okay. So the key is, closing those curriculum gaps is so important. I think the certification programs do that. I think talking with women who are willing to share their stories, again, talk about how they became the person that they are today in the field, what they did to overcome those barriers, is so important.
Diversity is a huge piece of the equation too.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say diversity, I don't just mean hiring a woman. I mean diversity of thought. There's diversity in a million ways to bring to the equation. A lot of the jobs today are filled through networking, and people tend to
Yes.
network with who they're comfortable with. But I'm sort of a firm believer in that salaries should be posted so people know what a company is
Mm-hmm.
willing to offer, because there's been study upon study upon study that if a man and woman are applying for a job, the woman will get hired at a 61% of the pay rate that the man gets hired at, which is certainly not fair by any stretch of the imagination. But I think we have a long way to go before we get to the point where we have pay equality. And we've talked about that since literally I was a kid, which has been more than a day ago.
Oh yeah.
But I think women sharing their stories with other women certainly is helpful. And I mentor a lot of women in the industry and young girls coming up the industry and young men as far as that goes. But being able to understand some of those topics and have different perspectives, I think you can turn that perspective into your own. And the younger generation now, I don't think they learn in the same way that we necessarily learned because they have a device in their hand all the time. They're used to instant gratification. They're used to that like button. They have different motivators and different senses of satisfaction than my generation does. And when millennials first came out, everybody talked about, oh, don't hire a millennial. They're a pain or, whatever, but they're great talent. You just have to figure out how to make that communication work between the different generations. And I think they're equally as responsible as we are. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that any one generation needs to bend over backwards for another without there being a little give and take there. But certainly women supporting women has come so much farther in the last 5 years, I think,
Yes.
even than the last 10.
Yep.
Wouldn't you
Oh,
agree?
I agree. I agree. And I think there's a variety of different things. I can just look, just within my own situation. I have a 22-year-old daughter. She's had me as a mother her whole life. So you can only imagine. Here I am, an emotional intelligence leadership advocate. I teach self-empowerment programs. I've got 4 coaching certifications. So we've had a lot of these conversations. And so I think, their expectations are higher, which is good. Another thing too that I find very fascinating. I have a number of millennials participating in a third book project I'm just finishing up now called How to Be an Emotionally Intelligent Leader. What I love about each of the millennials that have focused in this book, and I've got 20 leaders participating, they really care about the quality of their life. They're drawing hard boundaries about what they want. I mean, they want to work remotely. They want to have control over their salaries. They care about not feeling guilty taking their lunch to exercise. They really are thinking about what they need to get enough rest at night, what they need to function fully during their days. And so it's a different type of dialogue. I love it, by the way. it's something that's been important to me for a number of years, but I struggled with that because, and you and I, Carrie, I think are a certain age when we started. I mean, the workplace wasn't like that, and being a woman, we always had to work harder than everybody else and worked longer hours. It's nice to see that there's young women today that believe that they deserve better, and they're determined to do that. And they still get stumped from time to time on how to handle issues as they arise, specifically if they're pay related and gender related or opportunity related. Yeah, so the dialogue has to keep coming. There's no doubt about that. And getting back to the certification programs, there's just such power, again, getting that certification, feeling knowledgeable, feeling confident, and then knowing that you didn't spend $100,000 to get it. So if you want to make a career change, by golly,
There you go.
you're not going to feel really bad about it. And in fact, it's probably going to work to your advantage because whoever you're going to go to from an employment standpoint is going to see that you might have a variety of certifications. And that's really what employers need today. I mean, my goodness gracious, the world has advanced so quickly that there's new certification programs being created as we speak. And your point about academia
It certainly speaks to drive too. Yeah.
It's so slow moving. Academia is slow moving. For them to change the curriculum to be relevant can take years. So I encourage someone who's out there, if you're listening, certification programs the way you want to go, check out our scholarships. We'd love to be able to help in whatever way we can.
Yeah, and there's certainly nothing wrong with academic classes, or getting degree, but certainly they take longer. Certification can be a 6-week jumpstart or, a 6-day total immersion jumpstart into something as opposed to a 4-year degree.
And to your point, you raised the point earlier, how many people do you hear they get that 4-year degree? or they get their six, or I know people, I was in the healthcare industry. I literally hired physicians that within 30 days after them starting their jobs, they decided that they don't want to be doctors anymore. Okay. So what's good about certification is you can test something out. You don't have to go down this expensive traditional path. You test it out, you see if you like it, you see if you like the industry, because once you're in that and you're certified, you're better able to see the opportunities that would be available to you. So yeah, you,
Well, and anything STEM related, there's so many ancillary or adjacent things that you might find that you just really dig after you start down one
oh
path.
yeah,
Everybody that has been on this podcast, if we ask, what's your favorite thing about the industry? Normally what comes up is, well, there's always something else you can learn. We had somebody that leads construction, and she said that the cool thing is when you start building something for somebody, you get to learn about that. So that's how
yeah.
she learned about aerospace.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the other thing too that I really liked, and this is something that came out, I mentioned that we had donated our "How to Be a Woman in Technology" to a group of young women. They were in the a coding program. I loved it when they were done reading the book and they said to me, "You know what? We had such a limited view, and this is a young person, this kind of floored me. We have such a limited view of what it means to be a woman in technology. They really thought that if you weren't a programmer or a coder, you weren't a woman in technology. And when they read the book, here's 16 stories from women in all different types of technology related careers, and it really opened their eyes. And I think that's the key. Once you get in, whether you're reading a book or going through a certification program, or taking additional training, your eyes get opened. So that's my
That
favorite.
is a giant misnomer in this industry that you have to write code to be in
Yep,
tech.
yep. That was,
I
and
mean, it's certainly one
yeah,
path, but
yeah. I mean, here I was someone. I started off in technology. I worked for a company called Dyson Corporation. They sold in the time. They called it rotating magnetic media. That's what computers needed to basically work. And
boy, that's taking us
yeah,
back.
I
You
mean,
realize that,
it's
right?
really from the software standpoint, so it was the disk packs, the diskettes, the disk cartridges. And again, I did that, and I worked then also for a semiconductor company. But then every other job I had after that, I was involved in technology, but I was involved in migrating large populations of people into new technologies through communications. So I was in tech, quote unquote, but not doing anything with the hardware or the software. Or so
Sure,
it's
sure.
so again, so many different opportunities out there for people. Get your foot in the door, get that education, whatever it may be, training, certification, more formal college education, and keep your eyes open for opportunities. It's really what it's all about.
And kids today are exposed to technology so much earlier. My grandkids all get iPads at school. I happen to live in a state in Mississippi. There's a big push right now to even make computer science mandatory in elementary school
Yes.
because it's not, surprisingly enough. But a lot of these kids know more about tech than their parents do, understanding how to use that tech and balance that tech. And I think people really just don't realize what the demand for tech is going to be in 10
Yeah.
years. It's like the medical field. We will always need medicine.
Yep.
We're always going to need technology people that do a variety of stuff, whether it's programming computers, whether it's running the data centers where all of that information sits and resides, or selling the pieces and parts to make it all happen, or writing technical papers that talk about
Yes.
it, all the way through how it supports all of the other careers. It
Yeah.
supports science, it supports math, it supports everything. And it's an amazing career path. It's taken me all over the world several times. There's a kind of a sexy side to it that kids don't realize. They think it's all math and it's all pieces and parts, which is to me the fun part of it. I like the puzzle making piece, but there is a sexy part in that you can kind of go really wherever you want to go once you have that full exposure in tech. And companies like Apple, 50% of their employees don't have degrees, but they've started out through coding or some other means. And companies are starting to look more at skills than degrees because there is a huge talent shortage. So the abundance of opportunity out there is
Yeah,
amazing.
it really is. And there's this convergence of a variety of different, really big movements happening. And I think that, part of our world, Carrie, is still stuck in thinking of technology as a vertical market. They're thinking it more in this silo. And it became clear to me a number of years ago that technology is not a vertical market. It's every market. Do you know what I mean?
Right?
It enables
Yeah. Yeah.
every market. So you can't just have it off on its own someplace. It literally cuts through every single type of industry that we've ever known. So there's just that, so you were talking about, how it's just a part of life for young people. They are literally, and I am too. I mean, I don't know who I would be if I didn't have the technology enabling me as a human being. And, way back in the day, it took longer for innovation to catch on. So that's why you may have a parent or a grandparent who really isn't involved in any kind of technology, because back in the day, they thought that this would either go away, okay, or by the time that it caught on, they'd be dead. So they didn't think they needed to invest in the knowledge needed to use technology. But what became clear with technology and its advances, once we saw this exponential effect that it had, it's like, okay, well, no, it's not going away, and it's increasing at such a rate, that you just got to jump in, get familiar with it in whatever way you can, and recognize it's always going to be a part of your life, and just to learn how to use it in a way that feels good to you. Because it really is an enabler. It's not a replacement. Although AI, I'm fascinated by it. It really doesn't replace, a human being. We still are better at coming up with more emotionally intelligent decisions. Again, if we have developed the capacity. So it's just, you throw yourself in there and just start using it, and not comparing yourself to other people. I think that's another thing that holds people back from really getting involved and being open and to new technologies, is that they want to be a perfectionist, they want to know it all, and so then they think, well, oh, I'm not even going to get involved in it. So no, that's just not going to cut it anymore. Just get involved and don't worry about what other people think. You're not going to be the best person, the most proficient in it, and that's okay. Do what you can and just keep working it.
I think I was actually just on a podcast with an astrophysicist, and one of her comments was that she wished she had coded earlier because she uses it a lot in her
Oh,
job,
yeah.
and she could have taught herself. But the other thing is, she's a scientist, so a lot of science is failure, and that's how
Right.
you prove something true, is you prove that it's not in some cases, and technology is part of that. But these kids, I feel bad for them growing up, because they always have technology in their hand, and that instant gratification is important to them. But if you don't get that instant gratification, then, I think the emotional support piece of technology can't replace humans, right? A phone is not going to give you a hug. A phone is not going to make you feel better when you feel
Right.
bad, and people are anonymous behind technology, and so in some cases technology, I think, can be very cruel, because people will say things on a piece of tech that they won't say to your face.
Yeah.
And teaching people how to cope with some of that cruelty
Yeah.
is super
Yeah,
important.
that's for me. You talked earlier about, you mentioned that an emotional intelligence leadership advocate, and what you described there, Carrie, is really, my mission in life. I want people to understand, what emotional intelligence is, how they can develop it, and how they can lead themselves in an emotionally intelligent way. Just to give you an example, if you're someone who understands how your words and actions affect someone else, and you take the time to craft that message, let's say you're on your phone and you're tweeting, or you're on your phone and you're responding to a Facebook post. If you take the time to craft that message in a way, okay, so that it could be viewed in the best possible light, and that you really are thinking about how your words are going to affect somebody else, that's an emotionally intelligent response. In that moment, you are being a leader of your emotional intelligence. And that's really important. And I think, and I'll give you another example too, so an emotionally intelligent person is someone that, if something happens that gives them a negative charge, let's say they read something that someone else said about them, on social media. If they text in that moment of anger, there's a good chance they're not going to respond in a way that's going to feel good to them or anybody else. So when you are focusing on your emotional intelligence, when you get that negative charge, you're going to learn how to calm yourself down. Maybe you do something physical, maybe you take a deep breath. Maybe you take a little glass, you drink some water, but have some tea, but you do something before you respond. The new book that I'm writing, I actually go into 53 different things that you can do to become a more emotionally intelligent leader of yourself. And it really gets to your point, Carrie. What do we do when the world around us seems to be a bit crazy and a little bit unhinged? How can we respond to that brings about the best possible result for us and everybody else involved, quite frankly? And I believe you do it through your emotional intelligence leadership, how you lead yourself. And then once you do that pretty well, then you're in a good position to lead others.
So what would you pick as your top three? Like if you could just leave everybody with three amazing things to take forward from listening to this podcast today, and then go read your book for the other 50.
Okay.
What would the top three be?
Yeah. So, well, the one that I mentioned about taking time, really understanding how your words and actions affect others. Okay. And then when you get that negative charge, calm yourself down before you respond. Okay. I think that's a combination of a couple of them. I think another one gets to something that you said earlier, it's about mistakes. People still have a tendency towards perfectionism. That hasn't changed and as long as I've been on the planet. So I think, one of the things to do when it comes to mistakes is to own your mistakes. They're okay. All right. And think about the mistake as it's an opportunity to do better next time. And I think young people, especially, there's so much pressure on them to perform and achieve. My daughter went to a school. I mean, these students pushed each other to unbelievable levels of excellence, but they also pushed each other in some sad cases to suicide. And I think some of that came from this need to be perfect and not knowing what to do if they weren't. So I think the key is if, when you're emotionally intelligent, on some level, it's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake. That's getting to your point to science. That's how you learn. That's how you become better. That's how you become smarter, because then the next time you don't make that mistake. Okay, so I think that's another one that would be a takeaway. Owning the mistakes, it's okay, learning from them. And I think another one, the last one, and I'm going to say this one is one of the hardest ones, but I'm throwing it out there. I'm throwing the challenge down. I feel like I'm taking my saber and I'm putting it out there. So when you're in a conflict situation, okay, a lot of times we feel there's conflict all around us. The ability to, and I use the word empathize, and I'm going to come back to this. If you can empathize with the other person to try to understand why they're doing what they're doing or why they're saying the things that they're saying, okay, that is really a big thing to do. And a lot of times people can't empathize with other people. They just can't understand, how could someone do something so stupid? How could you do that? So empathy sometimes is hard. So when you can't empathize with somebody else, and you're in that conflict situation, be kind to the person.
That's true. You never know what somebody else is going through.
Don't know. That's just it. You do not know. I like to be a detective. I like to get underneath things and figure out why would someone do that? What could this be? What could that be? But sometimes you don't have time to do that. But know that in that conflict situation, I'll say to myself, you know what? I have no idea why they're doing that, but you know what? I accept them as they are. I'm moving on and let it be. So
yeah, well, you can't expect kindness if you don't give kindness, and you certainly can't expect respect if you don't give respect.
Yep.
So, there is that component that people have sort of lost touch with, I think, because you don't really get that from a device.
Right. And it's hard.
It's kind of a lost art. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I was thinking, I'll do this offline, but I had this idea for an app that in the moment can help people with those types of things. And that might be what comes out of this book after I get it out there and get more people. I have a fun self-assessment. There's a self-assessment actually in the book, Carrie, where people can see how they do and where they could improve. And it's interesting. It's fun. And it's something that I've loved because I believe that, as you go through life, you got to first know what it is that you're good at doing. Where's your natural talent? And then you got to be true to yourself. And then you have to, you have to really focus on what matters most in your life. And a lot of us, we don't, because we have emotional needs that aren't being met. But once we get those emotional needs, then we can focus on what's most important to us and not what might be important to somebody else. And then the third thing is really to go through life, lead yourself in an emotionally intelligent way. And if you can do those two things, if you know yourself, get your emotional needs met, and lead yourself in an emotionally intelligent way, life gets easier. And so that's what I'm all about. That's what the mission's all about. The scholarships, the self-empowerment programs, the books, and just delighted to be here with you today, Carrie. And again, thank you for everything that you're doing and spreading the word and helping us close these gaps. They're important gaps and they need to be closed.
Thanks. So if somebody needs to figure out how to get to your website, obviously I will put a link under the podcast, but there are some platforms that don't allow links. So if you could tell everybody how to get to your website and get to the scholarships,
Sure.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, the scholarships, it's Mission Sisters Who Work, all together, lowercase, .org. Mission Sisters Who Work.org.
Perfect. And then, of course, her books are available on all of the major platforms. So check those out as well.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Cheryl, thank you so much for your time today. It's been most enlightening. I think everybody will get something really great out of that. And for those of you listening, we hope you enjoyed. And we look forward to you listening on another version of our podcast series. Hope everybody has a great day. Thanks.